Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Austin Willett. I'm CEO of Different Strokes, and welcome to the latest in the Different Strokes 2023 webinar series. If you've attended one previously, it's fantastic to see you again. If this is your first time today, it's great to have you with us for this session. We're running these webinars every few weeks during the course of 2023. This is the third one that we've run so far today. Please do keep an eye on our website and on our socials for details of future sessions. Please do also let us know if there are specific topics that you would like us to cover in a future webinar. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Ollie Thorn, who's a Senior Manager in Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Client Solutions at PageGroup. Ollie will be talking today about work after stroke, and I know that this is going to be an absolutely fantastic session. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. The session is being recorded, but no details of anyone who's watching are being captured, and the only people who will be appearing on camera are myself and Ollie. There is a chat function, so please do use the chat to say hello to us, let us know where you're watching from, and also to post any general comments in the chat as well. In addition, there is a Q&A function. If you have any questions for Ollie, please do use the Q&A function. And then time permitting, we'll go through as many of these as we can after Ollie's talk today. If I could request, though, that if you do have questions, please specifically use the Q&A and not the chat function where we might miss that. Anyway, with no further ado, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Ollie. Welcome, Ollie.
Hi, Austin. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. And yeah, great to meet everyone. Although we can't see you, great to have you on the call. So I suppose to kind of set the call off and set the conversation off, I've been invited along to talk about how I can hopefully help provide information and also support when looking to get back into work after all of your individual journeys with stroke, and I suppose sharing the lessons that I've learned from my personal journey as well. So I will in a moment go into sharing some information about my personal story, and then I will follow up with that with a bit more information about my current role that Austin mentioned at PageGroup, followed on by some of those kind of key tidbits around getting back into employment with disability and how to talk about it, the reasonable adjustment recommendations, and then how to build that personal brand and effectively talk about disability with within the recruitment process. So yeah, please, as Austin mentioned, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we will jump onto them at the end. So I am going to share my screen, so I can just show a couple of photos just to give a bit more context to who I am. So this is me, obviously Ollie. I am a big skier outside of work, and I'll touch on that in a second, but I haven't always used the wheelchair. Before, well, no, it's about 11 years ago, I was actually an officer in the army. I was kind of following my dream, and then, as a lot of you will kind of have that first-hand experience, things can happen in an instant. And for me, I went out on my motorbike, which I had been doing, you know, for years previously. And unfortunately, I was involved in a road traffic accident. So someone unfortunately didn't see me, and pulled out in front of me on a dual carriageway. So there's a couple of pictures there from my motorbike beforehand, and I suppose the quite unrecognizable picture of my bike after the accident. You know, and I think it was important for me to kind of share this story, just because you know, I understand that, you know, everyone on the call will have their own experience, but there is also a lot of similarity in the sense of experiencing trauma and also going through something not necessarily of your choosing, and having to adapt, learn, to overcome those challenges that are put in front of us. And I think we'll come back to it later on in the call, but all of those amazing traits that you've had to develop through your journey are traits that are being cried out for by business. So there is a lot to give. And then I suppose, yeah, so that was a point in time about 10.5 years ago when my life completely changed, and went from a very active life where my identity was wrapped up in my physicality and my ability as such, and all of a sudden all of that was completely gone, and I had to kind of rebuild it from scratch. And you can see here I'd lost a lot of weight. I spent a lot of time in hospital, yeah, I had a very, very long journey of rehab of about 3 years, in and out of hospital with multiple different surgeries. And actually today I look around me now and I'm actually sat in that very same hospital today. I had to come for a checkup. Thankfully, touch wood, not wanting to jinx it, the internet is still, well, is much better than when I was an inpatient here. But yeah, back in hospital today. And I think that for me was important to say, because it's also a demonstration that there are a lot of businesses out there that are willing to acknowledge that when you do have a disability or any of those additional needs, there is always flexibility. And it's all about finding that right employer that is willing to be flexible and understand that, as demonstrated before, life happens sometimes. So yeah, I'm in hospital today for a bit of a checkup. Thankfully, they've got Wi-Fi, so I was able to jump on my work laptop and speak to you guys today. So yeah, we'll move on from that photo. I think for me, when I was going through rehab, as I said at the beginning, my identity before I was injured was very much around my physicality and what I could do. And being in the army, that was about running. It was about doing all of those stupid things like press ups and running with weight on my back. But that for me was important for me to understand what I could still do physically with my body after I was injured. So I'm paralyzed from the chest down. So just below where you can see my portrait on the camera now, I don't have any control of the majority of my body. But for me, skiing when I was growing up, I was lucky to learn to ski and experience the mountains. And through my rehab journey, I was invited along to learn to ski, and yeah, had the very good fortune of learning how to sit ski, which was for me incredible, because it taught me that actually, although I've been through a very big trauma, lost a lot of control and independence, there was still something I could find that gave me that feeling of fun, enjoyment, getting out there and challenging myself. And I know it's not going to be skiing for everyone, but I think it is, for me, one of my biggest bits of advice, I think, in that whole journey of rehab is finding something again that you get a lot of enjoyment from, because I think the rehab system and process can remove that from a lot of people. So yeah, just want to share a couple of other photos of that journey. So we were all able to bring our own experiences to it and work together as a group, which was for me absolutely incredible. And then really, when I was away skiing, I really I wanted to be able to support other people's journey when living with a disability. So I saw a lot of examples of people not getting the support that they they deserved and they rightfully should have had. Some of the great support that I know that Austin and his team delivers through Different Strokes. I wanted to get involved in that journey as well, so it led me to join a specific spinal cord injury charity and work at different hospitals. But also within that, I got to travel internationally, working for some different organizations supporting people with disabilities around the world. So you can actually see me at that bottom picture trying to get around the Taj Mahal in my wheelchair. They said it was completely accessible, but it was a bit challenging, but a great thing to experience. And then I suppose that bit which is probably wrapped up in who I am is pushing the boundaries, learning to drive some sports cars and taking them around racetracks, and then breaking down some barriers with this. It was a charity event that I was lucky enough to be a part of, and got pretty much carried to the top of Mount Snowdon, which was an experience. So that's a bit on me. I will now stop sharing my screen and I suppose jump onto my role at PageGroup. So after my time working in the charity sector, I really came to understand, both from my own experience, but also from the experience of others that I worked with, that work is so fundamentally important to everyone in society, but I think even more so for people who have a disability or have been through some kind of trauma, because of how society views people in employment. You know, it's fundamental to the way society runs nowadays. It's the way we get financial independence. It's the way we build friendships and meet new people. For me, I know to live with my disability, I have to follow a routine. You know, there are now, you know, kind of medical procedures that I need to kind of carry out every day, and that is made far easier if I follow a routine. And work gives me that structure, along with, as I said, those friendships, those you know, that financial independence to be able to get out and live my life. So I definitely saw the importance of that when I was in the charity sector, but really came to understand the real challenges for people looking to get back into employment with disability. And I think that's for multiple of different reasons. I think businesses previously have been not very supportive of people with disabilities, and I think that's not because they don't want to do the right thing. I think that is genuinely underpinned by a fear of doing the wrong thing. And when people are scared of doing the wrong thing, they naturally tend to avoid that topic. So actually it does more damage for everyone who is involved in the long run. And then I think there is also a limiting factor within society. If I look back at when I was injured, there were two main stereotypes for people with a disability that immediately jumped to my mind now that I knew I had a disability. And that was, you know, either being a Paralympian or almost being that element of the story that you hear thrown around in a lot of the main media around potentially being a benefit scrounger and being, I suppose, a burden on society and the family members around you. There weren't any stories that I heard of people getting into work, getting into employment and living a life of their choosing as such. It was one of those two extremes. And I think it's really important for us as a community of people who have a disability and have our own stories and journeys to share our stories with others in the community. So when people are in those early stages or are looking to change their journey, they know it is possible. They've seen that other people have done it before. You know, it was everyone used to believe that that a 4-minute mile was impossible until someone completed it. The next year, 50 people did it. And that's the power of knowing something is possible. All of a sudden, it opens so many doors. So that really led me to look at how I could help support people with disabilities into employment, both from supporting the individuals, but also trying to challenge business to be better. How can we try and remove that fear and make it an easy process, as it should be? So that led me to join PageGroup. So PageGroup, for those of you who don't know, is I suppose the holding company of a number of different brands: Page Personnel, Michael Page, Page Executive, and Page Outsourcing. But essentially, we are a very large global recruitment business. And I chose to work in a recruitment business because I saw it as a real opportunity to support both the individuals and business to do better and open up more opportunities. So my role, Austin read out my title at the beginning, and I appreciate it's a bit of a mouthful, but essentially I do exactly that. I support businesses to create more inclusive cultures, and then also support businesses to hire people from different talent pools from where they would previously look. So if I think it might be helpful to talk about some examples actually of how that looks in practice. So I have worked with a number of businesses ranging from very large global corporate businesses to very small enterprises as such, or charities that are looking to do better, and we've helped them build more inclusive processes in that recruitment structure. So how can you properly assess people? How can we train the people that are delivering the interviews to gain a better understanding of different people's needs and approaches to it? How can we get businesses to look at jobs and roles slightly differently? You know, there can be a fear sometimes of giving too many part-time roles out there, but actually that can be very beneficial for people with a disability, and it gives them an opportunity to hire some amazing people. So we've helped businesses go down that journey, so supporting them to develop a more inclusive culture for everyone. And then on the flip side, we've worked with a large number of people who have been looking to get into employment and work at businesses that they know are inclusive and understand their additional needs, but also a business where they genuinely feel they can use their skill set to really support the business. You know, they don't feel like they're being hired on a tokenistic value, but actually because of the skills that you can bring to the conversation. So I'm just going to jump into I suppose that application process. You know, when I speak to people with disabilities, very often, you know, a real challenge is how to mention disability in the recruitment process. You know, what is a reasonable adjustment? When should I speak about it? And anything else that I think is important in that process. And I think there are a number of approaches to it, and I'm sure Austin and I will probably have a bit more of a conversation with questions about it after I finish. But I will just share some of my thoughts on the process from my experience. Obviously, it's not gospel. It's not legal advice or anything like that. It's from my experience of working with a whole number of different people. And the line that I usually say to individuals around declaring your disability is, obviously it's up to you, and it's up to your own personal circumstance. But for me, if I declare my disability and a business doesn't want to speak to me off the back of that, that is a business that I know I don't want to work for. So actually for me, I talk about my disability in the application process very early on. And I appreciate that because my disability does come into the working of it, but it is part of who I am. And it helps a business understand those unique skill sets that I can bring to the conversation. You know, I'm similar to others on the call. You know, I went through something very traumatic that wasn't of my choosing, and I have demonstrated that, you know, I have a real level of resilience. I've had to learn to communicate with a whole range of different people through the through that rehabilitation process. I've had to learn to problem solve, to look at problems from a different angle because of the journey that I've been on, and all of those skill sets are being cried out for from business. So actually in that application process, I talk about those real strengths that I have because of my disability, the way I can look at things differently, problem solve, the resilience, the levels of communication that I've developed because of it. And it's about how you package disability and your journey as an added value. How can you make someone excited to speak to you because of your journey? Each of you will have such incredible individual stories, and you will have a huge amount of added value that you can bring to a business. And it's how do you package that in a way that that gets you to that next stage of the process. And that's really what the recruitment process is. It's how do you get to the next stage? So it's being able to speak about it as an added value, and trying to remove the fear from someone who is reading the job application with no knowledge of stroke or spinal cord injury in my case. How can you talk about it in a way that that brings a level of understanding and mitigates any fear, and kind of makes them a bit excited to speak to you? And I appreciate that sounds like, you know, we're asking, you know, my suggestion is asking a lot, but it's really can be quite simple. And I'll be more than happy to chat to anyone on a one-to-one basis afterwards, going into your kind of specific circumstance. So yeah, so I suppose to come back to that, for me, when would I mention disability? I would always mention it at the beginning of a recruitment process. However, I do acknowledge that, you know, and myself being included within this, you can go through a journey of getting a lot of no's, and you don't necessarily know why, because you feel like you are hitting the minimum standard. If you do feel like that is the case, or you know, you don't feel comfortable or don't want to mention your disability, don't mention it until later on in the process, when you potentially have been invited for interview, and then you can start talking about those reasonable adjustments. My one, I think, caveat would be to always mention it in the recruitment process. Don't leave it until you have been offered the job and you accept it, because I think you are then you're doing yourself a disservice. You aren't giving the business the opportunity and leaving a or giving a negative experience for that individual in those first few months of being at a new business. So yeah, definitely mention it in recruitment process. I personally would always mention it right at the beginning, but definitely, if you don't feel comfortable with that, do mention it in the questions that you should receive around any reasonable adjustments for interview process. And that is obviously, of course, if you do need any adjustments, you don't have to mention it if not. And then I suppose going on to reasonable adjustments. I suppose when to ask for reasonable adjustments, this will really depend on the business that you are looking to work for. If you are looking to work for a big established organization, they should have a process in place where they will always ask you at multiple different times through the process to ask you whether you need any reasonable adjustments. Obviously, if that is the case, do tick that box, and then you will likely get a call from one of the business's recruitment team to discuss any reasonable adjustments. If not, if it is a small business, I would suggest requesting the reasonable adjustments at point of interview if you feel like it is relevant. So for me, for example, if I have an interview over Teams, I don't necessarily need to have a reasonable adjustment because I can access and use Teams absolutely fine without any adjustments. However, if I was to go into a building, I would need wheelchair access. I would need a wheelchair accessible toilet. Depending where I am, I'd probably need a wheelchair accessible parking bay as well. So I suppose that's a good time to touch on some potential reasonable adjustments to the recruitment process. What is a reasonable adjustment? In the legal sense, it is actually quite grey. And what I mean by that is it hasn't been properly tested in court. So there isn't a black and white rule book for businesses or individuals to follow on what is a reasonable adjustment. But the school of thought within the reasonable adjustment conversation as a whole is that it's I think the key word is reasonable. What can you reasonably ask an employer to put in place for you to be able to demonstrate your skill set at its best? For me, that is wheelchair access. It is wheelchair parking. It is a wheelchair accessible toilet. And actually, I'm also neurodiverse myself, so I am dyslexic. So with that, it is also reasonable for me to ask for extra time if I'm doing a assessment. It is also reasonable for me to ask for the questions before the interview, because it gives me the ability to I suppose plan a little bit and ensure that I can respond with good examples and not necessarily think on the fly for those for that interview. And actually, the majority of employers will all be very happy to kind of make those changes. So yeah, the usual ones are around access to buildings or access to buildings or kind of access through digital means. So do you need captions on the screen, or do you need someone to translate for you potentially through either face-to-face or digital interviewing, or do you need, as I said before, like those questions being given to you beforehand? Do you need extra time for kind of any assessments? Those are the regular reasonable adjustments that are put into process. And then I suppose it goes on to reasonable adjustments in the workplace and access to work. For those of you who haven't heard of access to work is a government scheme where they will pay for all of the adjustments that you need to fulfill your job. And again, that is incredibly varied and very tailored to you as an individual. So it could be that that you maybe you need a standing desk, for example, or a specific office chair to sit in. It could be that actually you need new systems and bits of software on your computer to be able to dictate effectively. So the best dictation software to be able to dictate your emails. It could be that you need help actually getting to the office. So it could be around taxis or funding of a vehicle, or actually it could be funding of a PA, a personal assistant, to be able to support you in the workplace. Essentially, I suppose what I'm saying is there is a huge opportunity with Access to Work to get funding to support with any adjustments or changes that you need. So if I take my own example, I've had my wheelchair funded through Access to Work because I need a lightweight wheelchair to get in and out the office and transfer in and out my car. So Access to Work have actually paid for the for my wheelchair, and they've also paid for an attachment to go on the front of my wheelchair so I can get around London and get to the meetings that I need to. Yeah, for others, I know that they've done some great things around software on computers and things like that to be able to better support individuals in the workplace. The one caveat with Access to Work is it can be a slower process than we would like at the minute. Essentially, there is a bit of a waiting list, and it is also a little bit of a postcode lottery on how long that waiting list is. So what is really important is once you have accepted that position at work, is speaking to your future employer around those reasonable adjustments. So actually you can get that application in as early as possible to ensure that everything is in place by the time you start. Because what you don't want, because it's not going to be nice for you, is starting a new place of work and not feeling like you can do the job to the best of your capability because you don't have those adjustments in place. So yeah, my only tip there would be to speak to them as quickly as possible around the Access to Work process. And again, equally, my team or myself will be happy to speak with your advice around any of those kind of Access to Work changes or adjustments or requests that you need to put in as an individual. We have experience of working with the Access to Work process, both pardon me, both individually and for individuals that we've worked with as well. And then I think for me, I think one area that I think is not spoken about enough in the whole recruitment process is your personal brand. Who are you? You know, how do you want to come across? And you know, for me, part of my personal brand is my disability because of how it has affected me, how it has, you know, both challenged me, but it also has really developed skill sets within my experience and my capability. So that means I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm also happy to be able to help a business understand any reasonable adjustments that they may need to give me. So I think it's important for all of you to take some time to reflect on what you think may need to you may need in place to be able to support you. And don't be afraid to Google some different reasonable adjustments out there to see, you know, what works for you, because there are so many different options out there. And I think the more you know about those reasonable adjustments that you may want, the more you can potentially help an employer to navigate that conversation and remove any fear. You know, in an ideal world, yes, we would like all of our employers to be completely understanding, have all of the answers, and know about all of the reasonable adjustment processes out there and what's needed. But unfortunately, that isn't the case. I don't think it's going to be the case tomorrow either. You know, people have a lot that they need to know about in the workplace, and not many people talk about reasonable adjustments that often. So it isn't a top priority, I don't think, for a lot of people, unless they have more people requesting reasonable adjustments. So please do research, look at look at different options out there. And I suppose lastly, on jobs and where to find those different job opportunities. For me, I'd obviously say, come and speak to me or my team. We'll be able to talk to you about the employers that we work with. But in addition to that, I think there's a number of things you can do. So there is the Disability Confidence Scheme. This is a scheme that's been set up by government for businesses to demonstrate that they are an inclusive employer, I suppose in inverted commas, that they have taken steps to proactively support people with disabilities in the workplace. So you will be able to see if an employer is disability confident, and there are 3 different levels, and that should give you a level of security in the application process that they at least have started the conversation around disability, so they will be far more receptive on you talking about any reasonable adjustments. And that is easy to find out about. If you Google the Disability Confidence Scheme, there are lists of different employers out there. There are some different disability job boards out there. So there is a good job board called Even Break, and that has, I'm pretty sure, tens of thousands of different job openings on there. And to advertise a job on there, you have to follow quite a stringent process to ensure that you are going to be inclusive of people with disabilities. So you can then be confident that that you should be supported well through that process. And if not, there is a way to escalate any potential challenges that you do come across. So I think, yeah, there's that proactive work that you can do. So Disability Confidence Scheme, different job boards such as Even Break, and there are others out there. And then also, I personally believe, try applying to those different organizations and businesses that maybe don't have any of those other connections that I just mentioned, but have particular jobs that you are interested in. So yeah, good luck with it. Please do reach out if you have any specific questions. And I think Austin's going to come back on, and we're going to answer some hopeful questions that have come in. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Firstly, thank you for being so open and honest with your personal story, and also for taking us through your experiences with the job market, both from a work perspective and, of course, from a personal perspective. That's fantastic. I've had a couple of questions come in, but if you do have some more questions, please do use the Q&A function and send them through to us. So the first question that we've had, Ollie, is how have you reflected time off work, presumably in the aftermath of your accident? How have you reflected time off work on your CV?
It's a really, really good question. And I think there are a number of ways that you can go about it. And I think it really depends on how you want to, if you do want to declare your disability, or you don't. For me, I actually said on my CV, going through rehabilitation after an injury, and I actually picked out some of those skill sets, because I think CVs, they're a document where people talk about evidence and skills.
I think we've just lost Ollie for a moment, but hopefully he'll be back.
So feel free to talk about that. Sorry, did I freeze?
Just for a moment, yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now, Ollie.
Sorry, it's the classic hospital connection. I do apologize. Did you get the majority of what I was saying, or should I refresh?
If you could repeat, that would be great. Thank you for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, definitely. So I think don't be afraid to say going through rehabilitation after a stroke. Talk about some of those skill sets that you developed, the resilience, the levels of communication, the problem solving that you developed through that journey of rehab. If not, it is absolutely fine to say something else around managing a personal circumstance or something like that with the time block. But I would always go towards talking about the truth, because there's a lot of added value that you have learned and developed as a person through that journey that is valuable to a business.
Thank you. With the access to work process and application, do you need to get medical or professional input, I guess, as supportive evidence or proof of medical status or ongoing deficits to support your application and potential funding?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when you start a access to work application, you will be given a case manager as such from Access to Work, and they will manage your case, and they will likely ask for some evidence, so some medical evidence, but I think that can, yes, I think there will be some medical evidence requested, but it is top line. It's not going into a lot of detail, and it is also with your employer. So it is very much just around that need and that reasonable adjustment put into place. So you don't need a medical note from my understanding, if it's potentially a chair and things like that you are needing. It is between yourself, employer, and Access to Work to put that in, but you will be given a case manager that will help you through that process on a one-to-one basis.
Thank you. The next question is from someone working as an occupational therapist, working in stroke and currently working on a vocational rehab project. She asked, did you receive any support yourself, Ollie, from any professionals to support your journey back to work?
I received a what felt like, I suppose, being completely honest, a bit of a tick box exercise around work when I was in hospital, where they kind of asked me one question, ticked the box on a form to say that they'd asked it, and that was about it. Where I did receive a little bit more support was because I went through the military rehabilitation system. There was a bit more specific support there, and I definitely agree that there needs to be more done within the NHS and the occupational vocational system, more to be done to make sure there's some consistency throughout it. But I suppose we all know the challenges that the NHS are under, right? It's one more thing to the list. But I think it is incredibly valuable. I think for me, I think the language needs to be changed right from the beginning. If I look at spinal cord injury very specifically, when a child sustains a spinal cord injury, the language is very much, how can we get you back to school? However, when an adult sustains a spinal cord injury, it's how we're going to get you back home and we'll put you on benefits. That language, in my opinion, should be changed in how do we get you back to work? Because that then shows that possibility right from the very start. I think that for me is really important, but probably a larger, bigger conversation. Yeah, but interesting though.
Okay, thank you. A question that we had come in advance. What advice would you give to self-employed people after a stroke or an injury such as yours?
I think remember that Access to Work is still available. You will still get access to work if you are self-employed. I don't have a huge amount of experience in the self-employed side, but what I do know is, you will obviously get more independence around the time and effort that you put in. And all I would say is good luck. I think in anything anyone does around work, always good luck, and try and find a community to be able to share ideas. I think that's always important. I know I can see a question around social networks, right? I think that is brilliant. Connect with as many other people to share stories, share those challenges, and see if anyone's been through something similar that's willing to share advice. I think networks are key.
Yeah, thank you. Networks are important, and obviously it's something we put a massive amount of emphasis on Different Strokes is peer support, and our online support group has got more than 7,000 members because we know how valuable that can be. Another comment here from another OT. I'm also an occupational therapist in community neuro rehab, and we do support and prioritise individuals with vocational goals to return to work. So that's fantastic.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Another question come in, which I'm sure will resonate with an awful lot of people watching today. I don't have the stamina to do the level of work that I used to due to neuro fatigue. I want to include that activity on my CV, but I wouldn't be wanting those roles again. So I'm downgrading my work, but I still have those skills. I'm worried that I might be overselling myself. How do I manage that?
It's very interesting. I myself have struggled a lot with fatigue and how to communicate that to employers. And I actually have some members of my team that have to manage fatigue as well, and they're working on a part-time basis to kind of build up that experience at the moment to see if they want to move to full-time, but it's very open and flexible. And I think I suppose for me, it sounds like you've got some really good experience from your previous roles. Don't downplay that previous experience. I think it's okay to communicate that, you know, because of life circumstance, that now you want to potentially do a part-time role or work on more of a consultancy basis with businesses to give you that flexibility to be able to manage that fatigue. I think it's about having conversations with, trying to find that, which I appreciate it's a struggle, but it's how can you find the people or the businesses to speak to that are more open to discuss different working arrangements. But from what it sounds like you got some really great experience from past. So businesses are going to be wanting to look at how they can kind of tap into that experience in different ways. So there are always different solutions out there. So yeah, I suppose, would you put that on your CV or not? Maybe not, because it's the type of role that you're applying for. Actually, that fatigue element isn't part of what you're going to be bringing to the role as such, because you won't necessarily be going for a full-time role. You'll be going for more of a part-time or a consultancy based. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I suppose on a very general point here, and this isn't just for people who've had a stroke or people that have any disability, but for all of us really, as much as it's practical to do so, CVs should generally be tailored towards the role that you're going for.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you're going for a role that doesn't require a lot of the experience that you may have done in previous roles, and it probably wouldn't be relevant to put those particular elements on a form, because and obviously I say this as an employer and someone who's recruited individuals for Different Strokes and recruited individuals in previous jobs. What I'm interested in seeing on someone's CV is what skills and experience that would be required to do the job that I'm recruiting for, and skills and experience to do with a role that's not what I'm recruiting for. It is not particularly relevant to me, and I wouldn't pay an awful lot of attention to. So on a very general point, that's always good to remember. I suppose a little bit variation on a theme, but less about looking for a new role and more in the current one. I've managed to retain at the moment my current job, but I'm having trouble defining what reasonable adjustments help me recover. I don't feel that I can work to the same level currently, but will hopefully get there. I've had an occupational health assessment, but feel that hasn't really helped. Any suggestions on how to get more targeted support?
So it sounds a little bit similar to the fatigue question to me. It sounds a bit wrapped up in fatigue. And for me, a reasonable adjustment could be looking at a staggered return back into employment. And I think it's about having those conversations with your employer as early as possible to talk about that. Because if you feel like you can get there in the long run, it's how do you set up the journey to make that happen successfully and not burn out after a few weeks of doing it and then it not working and you're kind of peaking and troughing. So that the slower climb in would be something that I'd suggest, but it's all about speaking with your, and I suppose it depends on the size of business, but your line manager, with your HR business partner, or your kind of specific point of contact to discuss with. But yeah, that for me would be a nice kind of phased return to work. And then, yeah, reasonable adjustments on that. I suppose it would be, how can you how can you give yourself a bit more energy? And I don't know about your role, but it could be looking at working from home more regularly, right? Or having slightly different working hours. So could you have a slightly longer lunch and have a bit more of a rest there? And it's very, very varied on role, because I appreciate that's not possible for a lot of roles. But yeah, I think it's about how do you taper that time back into work. And then, yeah, I suppose then there is the other side of the coin. And it might not be what anyone kind of wants to hear, but it might be actually there has to be an acknowledgement at some point that maybe you're not going to be able to do the role that you did before, and having a conversation about potentially reducing hours or part-time, or a different structured role to be able to suit you, because it's really important to make sure you're in a role that is sustainable, that you feel like you are adding value, and you don't have loads and loads of stress, because not many people want to live in an incredibly stressful environment. And I think it's even more important when we are managing a disability, a stroke, a spinal cord injury, in addition to the work we are doing. There's not always the acknowledgement of, actually, we're doing a hell of a lot more just to get to work compared to everyone else. So it's got to be worthwhile when you get there. Otherwise, it can really affect the rest of your life. It can make you struggle with more fatigue. For me, it could maybe give me skin issues or bladder problems and problems with infection, which then just exacerbate and cause more stress and more problems in the long run. So it's managing your energy levels, and that's going to be different for everyone, and the type of role that you want is very important. Don't just smash yourself to go back into what you want, what you were doing, because that's what you feel like you should do. Tailor it to kind of your capability, I think, is really important. But that takes time and it takes practice. I get it wrong. I think everyone gets it wrong at times.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of the session now, but just a couple of final questions. Firstly, is there anywhere to either congratulate employees or complain about the return to work process? My employer has been amazing. I've thanked individuals, but not the company. Well, firstly, it's great to hear that your employer has been amazing, but anywhere kind of like formal that someone can go for that, Ollie?
Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a website that people review businesses.
Okay, thank you. I hope everyone got that before Ollie froze again. But that's Glassdoor, so if people would, I'm sure you'd be able to Google that and find it. Okay, you just popped out again then, Ollie, but I think we got you mentioning Glassdoor.
Yes.
And final question is just how people can get in touch with you for more support. Obviously we're happy for people to contact us and forward it on it, or are you happy for people to contact you directly?
Yeah, very happy for people to contact me directly. Austin, I know you'll share my email address after this out to everyone.
Yeah, I can pop that in the chat
Pop it in the chat as well. And then I am on LinkedIn as well. Ollie Thorn. You can see my spelling in my name, little badge there. Yeah, Ollie Thorn at PageGroup. So yeah, please do reach out, and it will either be either myself or one of my team getting back in touch to have a bit more of a conversation. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Well, I've just popped your email in both the chat and the Q&A. So obviously, if anyone has got any queries, please do thank Ollie. Ollie, thank you so much for this afternoon. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear from you. We really appreciate your time. I've had some fantastic comments to everyone, and I know that it's been a really valuable experience to everyone on this call. So thank you to Ollie. Thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Our next webinar that we will be running will be on the 28th of April. That will be a session on functional electrical stimulation with Katie from Odstock Medical. Please do look at our website and on our socials for more info on that, which we'll be following in the next week or so. Really hope you've enjoyed this afternoon's session. I'd be very grateful if you're able to provide us some feedback on this. So when I end the call in a moment, you should be receiving a feedback survey straight away. It'll only take you a minute or two to complete. There's only about 4 or 5 questions on there. But if you could complete that feedback survey straight afterwards, I'd really appreciate that. So once again, thank you to Ollie. Thank you to everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers. Bye.